Greetings and welcome again to the Gaming Codex, the show where I try to explain to you all the various terms used within video games and the video games industry, and today's term is of the utmost importance. It is crunch. And what exactly would that be? Well, according to the general definition, crunch is a critical period of time during which it is necessary to work hard and fast. Now, that may not seem like it's something related to video games. I mean, every sort of industry, every sort of place where you work sometimes has periods where you do need to crunch. You need to work a bit faster, you need to work harder to get something done on time. It even applies to homework or housework. It applies everywhere. But in video games, there's a bit of a difference. The video games industry is, some would say, over-reliant on crunch. Others would say based around it to the point where it is killing people, or at the very least driving them away, making them burn out quite quickly, and refusing to ever return to this industry. There is no shortage of absolute horror stories of games that have been developed in crunch mode for years at a time. And by this I mean people have been coming to work and not leaving for weeks, sleeping under their desks, working 100+ hours a week. To put that in perspective, that's around 15 hours working every day. And that's an average. People would work more than that on some projects. And again, this is something that doesn't just happen near the end. When, oh, it's crunch time, let's get to it and finish this thing right on the release date. Or before it. A couple of months before that, actually, because we need validation and other stuff. In the video game development process, crunch time can last for years. Some of the more well-known examples would be LA Noire, but honestly, pretty much every game development studio has this kind of mentality, because the people working there were molded by a similar experience they shared at a different company, usually a bigger one, and they kind of took that culture with them when they left. You would think that big companies like Electronic Arts or Activision would take better care of their employees, but for the longest time that wasn't actually true. Electronic Arts especially was famous for having pits of programmers that would be whipped if they didn't give it 150%. Well, not exactly, I mean that's an exaggeration, but they had the habit of working their employees past the breaking point of any kind of reason and not actually paying them for that overtime, because due to some loopholes they didn't qualify for it. And it can be sure that a company that's evil by nature will use any sort of justification to not pay people and work them to death. Thankfully, things have sort of improved a bit since this whole ordeal was revealed to the entire world, not just the people in the gaming industry that are used to it and don't see it as a problem, but it was revealed to the entire world through the EA Spouse blog post many years ago. And Electronic Arts is not the only company that does it, they all do it. And why, you may ask? Well, it's because game development is essentially a flawed process. And that's something that the people playing games often don't understand. That's why the popular definition for crunch is none. Making games is all fun and games and everything is peachy. No, it's not. You have release dates set in stone by people often not actually involved in the production of the video game itself. You have dates that are completely unrealistic, and worse than that, you have changing scopes. You have a game that started out as being something, then around the middle someone said, hey, you know what, we should actually make it this, and because I'm the boss we should do it, because you know I'm the boss, and the employees do it because they're paid to do it. But the time left until the release date isn't really enough to do it in a reasonable way, so people will be forced to work until their eyes bleed. And the worst part of it all is that this becomes the norm. It's been happening for so many years, it's been happening since the beginning almost, that this is the norm. But to be fair, in the beginning, I mean in the real beginning, people would do that because they'd be working for themselves. You'd have 1-2 people working in their bedrooms, in their garage, doing everything out of passion, and that sort of was was confiscated by the big corporate machines that use that passion to fuel their wallets, their giant budgets, their gold-plated jets. And yet, the people who don't aspire to this, the people who say, no, I won't do overtime unless I'm paid, I won't stay here for 1 week without showering, just grinding away at that code, just so your game will be released on time and your shareholders will be happy, those people are seen as traitors. They have betrayed everyone there that's in it, for the passion, for the work, for making the game. That person is chastised for trying to have an actual normal life and not be treated as some coal miner from the 1800s. Oh, if they could get away with not paying people and just having them compensated with company script that can only be redeemed at the company store, you know they would. Electronic Arts would totally do it. Heck, I think they've done it several times. That is the reality of how most video games are being developed. Not that big companies actually admit it. According to the marketing definition, crunch is something that, nope, never happens. We treat people humanely. This is not how we get away with abusing our employees and working them to the breaking point without actually doing anything illegal, all for the sake of making our shareholders happy, or because we have no clue how to actually plan out the development. It happens constantly. It happens even with smaller studios that do it out of desperation, out of the fact that they don't have enough money to actually pay people what they're worth over the necessary amount of time actually needed to complete the game and still keep the people working on it sane, mentally stable. They sometimes try and compensate this by having a gym, by having a ball pit, having something that will help people relieve stress, but in the end, it's still not a healthy way to work. And yet, when you see the end result, when you see a game like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, in all its majesty, you kind of say to yourself, wow, that's an amazing game, but hey, you know what, they should probably work harder on it because it's kind of full of bugs, isn't it? But they were already at their limits. They couldn't do more. It's a process that destroys people. And the reason you still got great games through it all is because the people making them are amazing. They are masters of their craft. They're artists at the top of their game, and they won't be for long because this kind of way of developing things sort of makes them stop after a while, a short while. But yet crunch still continues because budgets will always be fixed, release dates will always be set in stone a long time before anybody actually knows the scope of the game, and the developers themselves would always have more passion than common sense or self-preservation. So closes another chapter of the Gaming Codex. Come back next time when we will talk about a brand new subject. Goodbye.